Hi, this is Mr. Westros, it's most stylish, and today I'm talking to you about the Vietnam aspect of the mock exam, okay, which is a bit that I've marked personally, okay. Now, in terms of the first part, the 4 marker here, okay, what we've got is a situation where it's asking for some things that you can infer. That's the key word. What can you infer? So we've got a couple of examples here, but basically what I found was people who virtually copied out what was in the text, maybe using different words. I found I couldn't give you a mark for that. But people who were able to make some assertion or work something out that wasn't actually written there, but you could work it out from the text, well, that's what an inference is. What I did find is you either got 2 marks, or 0, 2, or 4, because actually picking out the details from the source, the second bit was done pretty well. If you got the inference right, the details of the source followed, okay? The Tet Offensive was hugely costly for the MVA, okay? That's a better way. Some people put you lost a lot of men. Well, actually, it did say that they'd lost a lot of men in the source, okay? And I think this is a really interesting inference. If you were looking to add to your answer, I'd go with this one, okay? That the North Vietnamese suffered similar morale problems to the ARVN and the USA, okay? Which is not something that's been that well documented, okay? So maybe that the North Vietnamese suffered similar morale problems to the ARVN or the USA. Basically, an inference is something that you can work out from the text, but something that is not written in the text, okay? So look back over your answers, and what you'll find is if you've just written something out from the text, I haven't been able to give you a mark. But if you've been able to work something out, then I have, okay? So maybe have a look at what's on here, there's a couple of examples, and then improve yours in green pen. Should be relatively straightforward. That means you can get on to the second question, the 12 marker. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so in terms of the part of the mock exam that I've marked, obviously this 12 marker bears the most marks, okay? And it's a question that's in all of the papers, really. Obviously, you're not going to do the one Anglo-Saxon and Norman this year, but there's also an 8 marker, which is all the same skills in the American West. So it's one that's well worth practicing. And it's also a question where you can, if you know your stuff, achieve 10, 11, 12 out of 12. In a much more straightforward fashion than you can on the source usefulness question or the interpretation. So it's well worth getting this to a good standard, perhaps above target, so that you give yourself a bit of leeway on the other ones. Now then, we've agreed these targets for the explain question here, and these are the ones that I've used on your answer. If it's a tick and a colour, that means you've done it well. So tick blue, you've been really good with evidence and dates. T blue, you've got to work on it. Now, you've got a target. It might be that you've either not done it, or it might be that you can maybe just develop it a little bit more. So what I've tried to do when I go through this now with you is by using the different colours, I've tried to show where I would use them, okay? Now then, these paragraphs are the 2 options that were given to you. Even if you write these to a very, very high standard, you can only get 8 out of 12 if you don't bring in your third option, which is obviously target green. I'll go on to that on the next slide. But I figured it was worthwhile going through these 2 first of all. Obviously the navy, the boxes are in navy. You can't really see that because as it's moved across, we've lost that a little bit. But yeah, so let's have a look then. In terms of the domino theory, it's pretty well answered. But if you got blue, you could always think about the years and the people involved, okay? So 1954, John Foster Dulles and President Eisenhower. And you can also, this box here should be in blue. Let's see if I can recreate that for you now live. Yes, I can. That should be in blue as well, because that's the example that if Vietnam fell, Laos and Cambodia and Thailand would be next, okay? Generally, the question was answered pretty well, but you could add some more specifics into there. So if you got blue, or even if you didn't, have a look through. Can you get the years in? Can you get some specifics? I think key terms for this was generally done pretty well. What you can do, though, is you could always link it to the Truman Doctrine, okay, and containment, all right? So that would be another way in of bringing a little bit more. If you feel that your domino theory paragraph is a little bit thin on evidence, get the dates and the people in, and then link it to the Truman Doctrine, okay? I know that's not in the years in the question, but you're showing how this developed on from something else, and that's fine. Then, obviously, in red, how did this lead to America becoming more involved in Vietnam? Okay, I've used the keywords in the question there, and I've used the red. Now, what I would say here is that you've got to think about the idea that it's not just about Vietnam. This actually, what is happening in Vietnam is more important than just Vietnam. Because if you believe the domino theory, then you believe if Vietnam goes, the rest will fall here. So this led to America becoming involved because it kind of elevated the importance of Vietnam to a much more significant situation in that America couldn't let anywhere fall to communism because the impacts would be massive and there'd be repercussions across the areas, okay? So this meant America got involved in Vietnam, not just to save Vietnam from communism, but to save the surrounding area. And this made the situation in Vietnam starker, more important, more significant. Those were the kinds of things that I would say. Right then, let's move on then to the Gulf of Tonkin paragraph. Okay, again, this was mentioned in the question. And again, you can see from blue, what I've got is the date, okay, 5th of August, 1964. And pretty good this, actually, that it was a fabricated attack. That was pretty well explained. Maybe not use the word fabricated, but that idea. And the word excuse kept cropping up as well, which links nicely to the question. What not everyone mentioned was the Gulf of Tonkin resolution and what that gave Johnson. Okay, so if you're looking at your Gulf of Tonkin paragraph and you're thinking to yourself, hang on a minute, I haven't really got to get a bit more in terms of blue in there and a bit more key terms in. Get the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, and it gave him the powers to take all necessary measures to repel any armed attack. This led America to becoming involved in Vietnam because it gave Johnson the green light, if you will. It gave Johnson the kind of backing of Congress, okay? Now, obviously, a president in America cannot act solely on his own. They can, but if he has the backing of Congress, then that makes his decision much greater. And obviously, it links in with the American public opinion at the time as well, which was largely in favour of the war compared with what happened later, okay? So so this led to America becoming involved because it was the excuse, which a lot of you mentioned, that Johnson was looking for, okay? Some of you did go on to talk about Ply Q, which was where American base was attacked and a number of soldiers and aircraft were destroyed. Obviously, that's outside the time period, though, so I couldn't credit that. But I suppose it does show you understand the short-term trigger causes. So have a look at that, pause it if you want, go through and add, based on the coloured feedback you've got, to yours. Obviously, if you've not written one of these paragraphs, or if you've written it all together, say you've got Navy as a target, look how I've separated them out into separate paragraphs. And it might be worth, even though there'll be a bit of rewriting there, to separate out your answer based on that. Let's have a look at the green paragraph then. Okay, so this is in a green box, and I think it is in a green box, but I'll just add a little bit more of my own green now live for you. So because this is the green paragraph, add another paragraph in. Now, on quite a number of them, I wrote that maybe it would be worth looking at previous indirect strategies that had failed. Now, this doesn't mean that if you wrote something else, this is the only paragraph you can write. But if you've got green because you haven't written a third paragraph, I'd definitely go with this. If you have written a paragraph of your own knowledge, I'd maybe consider going down this road, because I think when you look at the keywords for orange and the specificity that you can get in for blue, then I think it gives you an opportunity to show some real knowledge on the topic. And that's why I would suggest this, okay? So between 54 and 63, the USA had tried several indirect strategies. Remember, an indirect strategy is where you don't put soldiers in, you don't put boots on the ground. You try and do things that make the result you want come out of it without actually doing the fighting. But they'd all failed. They'd paid for the 8-year war, 46 to 54. They sent advisors to train the ARVN, and I've got some numbers here for you about the number of advisors, culminating in this 16,000 advisors under Kennedy's kind of presidency, okay? They'd also moved villages into strategic hamlets in 1962, okay? And we know that 7,000 of the 8,000 strategic hamlets were infiltrated by the Viet Cong. So if we look at blue and orange, we can see why this is such a good paragraph. You don't have to have put all this in, but what you can do is show the examiner that you've got a real knowledge of the topic by talking about previous American policies that had failed, okay? So what I've done is I've written like one paragraph on this side here. I've written a paragraph there, but then I've shown some of the other information that you could add in to your answer, just to develop it, the blue and the content. So then let's look at red and how this led to it. So all these indirect actions failed. The US could easily lose face if it gave up. All right, they would look like a weak power, okay? And also, this led to America becoming involved in Vietnam because they became invested in it. The previous ideas hadn't worked. So to walk away, not only would America lose face, but they would lose that money that they'd spent, the advisors that they'd sent, everything that they'd done beforehand would be wasted, and they were reluctant to do that. A bit like a gambler who's on a bad run, they're reluctant to write it off, so they keep escalating it. And plus, you could also mention that each step is an escalation, like my little stairs there that I've drawn. And therefore, that where was America? When Strategic Hamlets and in 1962 and 16,000 advisors in November 63 weren't working, where'd you go next? You're up near the top of the ladder here. Where'd you go next? So I think this is a really good paragraph. It allows you to talk about America losing face. It allows you to talk about not wanting to waste the previous investment. And also because they got to a stage where really, once Kennedy's assassinated, Johnson takes over, and really there's only one option open to him: direct involvement. Okay? So again, you might not agree with me. You might not want to go down this route for your third paragraph, but I think it's a paragraph that offers you a real opportunity to show off to the examiner, and with two other good paragraphs, give you the chance of, to full house. 12 out of 12. So have a look through this. Take the bits from it if you will. What I will say is years generally was poor. So it might be that you can just develop your chronology a little bit with this, but have a look through and see how you can improve your work, okay, and show it either to myself, Mr. Granger, or Mr. Otway, and see what's there. All right, thanks for your time. Bye.